Wouldn't it be awesome if we could just go down to Home Depot, buy a printer, push a button, and boom, have a gun? That's what the liberal liars and the mainstream media want the public to believe. We're talking about 3D guns, firearms, fact and fiction, the 3 F words, on today's AK Show. Despite all the media lies, the one thing that really pisses me off about this whole 3D gun issue is that the taxpayers paid for the federal government to defend itself in a lawsuit that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. The SCOTUS refused to hear the case, by the way. And after all was said and done, the government wins. Defense Distributed does not get to publish all of the specs for the 3D guns that it wanted to previously publish. And then they reach a new settlement. Why? After all this money is spent defending this suit and telling this guy he can't publish this information on the internet, all of a sudden we're shifting who controls the export of arms from the State Department to the Department of Commerce, and the rules and regulations that were prohibiting the publication of this information on the internet go away. So not only did the federal government completely and utterly waste our taxpayer dollars, shocking, I know, but now we're dealing with the mainstream media spewing liberal lies about gun control and talking about how all of a sudden criminals can just go out to Home Depot, buy a little printer, plug it into their computer, punch a button, and print a gun. Oh, and the guns, by the way, the media, ABC at least, called them the assassin's dream. A pretty crappy dream, if you're asking me, because we're talking about a plastic gun that is completely unreliable, may or may not work the first time you fire it, becomes even less likely to work the more you fire it, and it's not exactly what an assassin would choose if they wanted to be highly accurate and have a piece of machinery that's going to really pull the job off. So lies, 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 lies by the media. I know that's shocking. That's just as shocking as the government wasting our money, right? So what is it about 3D guns that has people so scared? Because they're plastic? Because we can make them ourselves at home? Because you see, most people don't even realize that we can already do that. But we can already do it with much better materials. It's just that the idea has been spread around that suddenly you really can just punch a button, when the reality is that's a bunch of bull. I feel a little bit about 3D guns like I do about bump stocks. The federal government shouldn't be telling us we can't have them, but at the same time, given the options, you're going to want a much better gun. I would rather use a CNC machine and get my lower milled out at home than purchase an expensive 3D printer to print a plastic piece of crap. So these are not the firearms that the media wants you to believe that they are. Again, they're misleading the public to further their gun control agenda, and it's all a bunch of BS. Americans making their guns at home is not new. We're allowed to do that. It's for our own personal use. The problem that came up in this case is that the State Department, under their rules and regulations regarding the export of firearms, said, you're publishing this information on the internet and you're making it available to the world, and we have a problem with that. But apparently that's going to be changed, and we are allowed to use these blueprints, if you will, to print our own 3D guns at home, if that's what you want to do. So if you're in the group of Americans that actually likes firearms, loves the Constitution, is looking for a new project, and keep in mind, the more people who do this, the more improvements there will be, the more technology will advance, and maybe someday we will be able to actually punch a button and create a firearm in our own home. But if you're in that group of people who sit back and go, this sounds like a fun project, check out Defense Distributed's website, because I was kind of surprised. I really liked it, and they have unique items on there, such as a 30-round AK magazine that you can create called the Diane Feinstein, which just made me laugh. So it could be a fun project for those of you who fall into that category of folks who love the Constitution, build their own firearms, versus the group that can't figure out which bathroom to use. So what frickin' criminal is going to spend thousands of dollars, and I don't mean like $8,000. I mean at least $10,000 and up to $100,000 to buy the kind of printer that's actually going to print a usable firearm. And then on top of it, they're going to take the time to get the plans, print each part, and assemble a firearm versus just stealing one or buying one, if they're not prohibited from purchasing one, to accomplish the job. This is just absolute, utter nonsense that is being spewed by the mainstream media in order to further the gun control agenda. Building a 3D firearm is not cheap, it is not easy, and it is not reliable. This is not the assassin's dream. So, if you do print a 3D gun at home, remember that you have to have at least 3.7 ounces of metal in it. There's a federal law known as the Undetectable Firearms Act that was passed in the 1980s during the time that the Glocks were becoming popular. Remember the Glock 17? Scary, scary handgun. Had all this weird modern polymer on it, and the liberals freaked out and said, oh my God, these are undetectable at airports, we have to do something. So they did something, and they passed a law that said every firearm has to have 3.7 ounces of metal in it. We still follow that law today because it keeps getting renewed, most recently in 2013, and it requires us to have that amount of metal in each and every firearm that we create at home, or you will be violating federal law. So let's review. It's not easy, it's not cheap, and it's not reliable. Is this the assassin's dream that we're talking about here? Criminals are going to go out, spend a whole bunch more money than they would if they just went down to a shop or did a private party sale, or stole the gun. You know, don't forget that we're talking about criminals who would actually steal guns. Not what the mainstream media wants you to believe. This is Alex, AK Kincaid. Thank you for watching The AK Show. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the 3 F words: firearms, fact, and fiction. Get Alex AK Kincaid's book, Infringed, The Gun Owner's Guide to Gun Rights.